بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Alhamdulillah, we have tawfiq to continue our study of jurisprudential rules or maxims. We already talked about قاعده الطهارة وقاعده السوق المسلمين, the rule of purity and the rule of Muslim market. The next rule that we discuss is قاعده اصاله الصحه, the maxim of validity. And again, this is very well-known rule in our fiqh, and in many different sections of fiqh, this rule is used. It can be in tahara, it can be in salat, it can be in ibadat or mu'amalat. In different parts of fiqh, this rule can be used, and it is also something that you find similar to it even among non-Muslims. The spirit of it can be found even among non-Muslims. And this is why, inshallah, later when we talk about the reasons and the proof, one proof is siray uqala, the practice of rational people. It has been like this. But before we go to the arguments or reasons for believing in this rule, let's clarify exactly what we mean. What we mean by اصالة الصحة في فعل المسلم is sometimes a moral issue and sometimes it's a legal issue. And the second one is important here, but we have to mention the first one because that is important, and also not to mix them up. Sometimes a person, a mu'min, says something, does something, goes somewhere, and there is a chance that he might have done something right or something wrong. For example, he told me something I didn't hear. He could have said something nice, he could have insulted me. What should I think? I should say, inshallah, he said something nice, he inshallah pray for me, not curse. Someone goes, for example, with a lady, you should say it must be his mother or sister or wife, not that we think bad about that person. Someone went to a pub, you should say maybe he wants to ask the address. So we shouldn't think in a negative way about mu'mineen. There is hadith and Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam, ضع أمر أخيك على أحسنه. Put the affair of your brother in the best possible position. Means try to interpret it in the best way. حتى يأتيك ما يغلبك من till something comes that then you have no choice. Sometimes then you cannot deceive yourself because it's very clear. There is no other interpretation. But unless it has become crystal clear, as long as there is a chance, always, even if it is 90% chance of being bad, think it is good. But if it is 100% clear, then you cannot. وَلَا تَظُنَّنَّ بِكَلِمَةٍ خَرَجَتْ مِنْ أَخِيكَ سُوءًا وَأَنْتَ تَجِدُ لَهَا فِي الْخَيْرِ مَحْمِلًا. As long as you find a good interpretation for what he has said, don't think in a negative way, in a suspicious way about the word which has come out of his mouth. So interpret what he says in the good way, as long as there is a way. Okay? So, this is something which is very important, but this is different from what we are discussing. First of all, the book says it is about mu'min and not maybe about every Muslim. Although I personally think that we should try to be with everyone like this, but maybe for mu'minin it's more important and more necessary. But this doesn't bring legal implication. It's a moral issue. For example, if someone met me, I don't know, he said Salamun Alaikum, or he said something bad. I cannot say, Inshallah, he said Salam, so now Salam needs reply, and it's wajib for me to say reply. It doesn't bring legal implications. I can say, Inshallah, he meant Salam, but I cannot establish that this is Salam so that I have to act upon it. Of course, you can say Salam Alaikum, but it's not necessary. You understand? So, you assume he meant something good, but you don't need to consider it as that was the case legally. What we mean by asalah to siha is something different. What we mean by asalah to siha is that a person, whether mu'min or just a Muslim, has done something, and we don't know he has done it in the way which was valid or not. We can assume that it was valid. For example, we have a mayyit, and someone said, I have done Salatul Mayyit. Okay? And you know that he has done Salatul Mayyit, because later I will talk that if you are in doubt that that person has done it at all or not, you cannot say As-Salatu Siha fi Fi'l Muslim. But if he says, I have done Salatul, you know he has done Salatul Mayyit, but you don't know was valid or not. Maybe he didn't observe some conditions. As-Salatu Siha fi Fi'l Muslim says you don't need to worry. You don't need to investigate. You assume it was valid. Or for example, someone has done zabh. You are in doubt. You say as-salatu siha. Someone has a masjid was najis, and we know someone washed it, but we don't know we washed it properly or not. We say as-salatu siha fi fi'l Muslim. So any act that a Muslim does, and we are not sure whether he did it in a valid way or not, we can assume that he did it in a valid way, unless it is proved otherwise. This is what we mean by asalatu siha fi fi'l al-Muslim. What are the arguments? First we mention arguments, and this by itself clarifies more. Then we have few important points. One argument is as-sira, practice. Siratul uqala or siratul mutasharra. Siratul mutasharra means mu'mineen, Muslims who were practicing, have always been acting like this. You remember we said, if something has always been done by Muslims up to the time of Ma'soom, then this means that Ma'soom was happy with this. They could not have all been doing this without taqreer of Ma'soom at least. If Ma'soom was not telling them to do this, at least Ma'soom must have somehow approved, endorsed. Or Siratul Uqala. If something is not only done by Muslims, something that all reasonable, rational people have done it up to the time of Ma'soom. And Ma'soom has not stopped Muslims from this. There is no rad' in Siratul Uqala. We must establish that there is no rad'. Again, this is also hujjah. For example, Sayyid Bujnurdi, who has a قواعد fiqhiyya, there is a quotation. He says, إن عمدة الدليل على قاعدة الصحة في سيرة هي سيرة العقلاء كافة من جميع الملل. He says the most important reason for the maxim of validity is the practice of uqala from all nations and all traditions and all religions. في جميع العصور من أرباب جميع الأديان من المسلمين وغيرهم. In all ages, Muslims, non-Muslims, والشارع لم يردع عن هذا الطريق. And Shara has not stopped them, has not banned Muslims, didn't say we don't agree with them. Ayatollah Khouy rahmatullah alayh mentions the same thing, but instead of saying Siratul Uqala, he focuses on Mutasharra'a. He says, As-Siratul Qat'iyya min jami'il muslimin al-mutadayyanin ala tartib asar al-sihha ala a'mal al-nas. He says there is established practice of Muslims who are mutadayyin, who are practicing in all ages. In any case, there seems to be no doubt that Muslims and even non-Muslims have always dealt in their social life with other people, assuming that when they do something, they are alert and they are doing it properly. Yeah? You assume like this. For example, let me give you an example about uqala. If you go to a pharmacy and take your prescription, even if you are seriously ill, what do you think? You never say, let me show this to someone else. Maybe they gave me, wrong medicine. You assume asalah to الصحة. You say, this person must be alert and conscious and doing his job properly. We don't assume that it's wrong or it's dubious and I have to investigate. Because life becomes very difficult if we don't trust people in what they do. Okay? So, this is one reason. Another reason is some verses of the Quran. But please listen carefully to see how they argue from these verses. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Ma'idah, verse 1. Among different things, He mentions Awfu bil-uqud. When you make contracts, you must be loyal. You must keep your contracts and don't disregard them. If I told you I sell this, or any agreement between us, we should be loyal to it. Another ayah is the ayah number 29 of Surah An-Nisa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about false ways of transaction. You cannot for everything, get money and exchange. But He has exceptions. One exception is إِلَّا أَن تَكُونَ تِجَارَةً عَن تَرَاضٍ. If there is a trade, a business, and both parties are happy, then here you can give and take. We cannot, for example, sell haram. We cannot, do many things, riba, whatever. But if it is tijaratan and tarad, means it's a trade, it's a business, and both parties are happy. Of course, other things have to be considered, but a general way of transaction in Islam is tijara. So, the argument is like this. They say, when two people make contract or sell and buy, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this is valid and everyone should observe it as valid, not just two parties. They say, when Allah is talking to mu'mineen and says that you must be loyal to the contracts, it means the two parties of the contract and other people also. But here some ulama have disagreed. They say it's difficult to make this conclusion. We know that those two people have to be loyal, but the ayah is not talking about other people. Yes, from outside we know that if someone sells and another person buys, I should also assume that this has been transferred. But this is what we know from outside. The ayah's focus is on two parties of the transaction. So, we go then to what we have as extra dalil. Of course, there are some hadiths which are also there, but there is an extra dalil here that Sheikh Ansari, rahmatullah alayh, our great, scholar Sheikh Ansari, in his book on usul, which is known as Fara'idul Usul, normally they say Rasa'il, he says, Al-Mustafadu min tatabbu'i fatawa al-fuqaha min mawarida kathira. Fi mawarida kathira. He says, if you do tatabbu, investigate, fatawa of fuqaha, in many, many cases, what you would be able to draw from them, أنهم لا يختلفون في أن قول مدعي الصحة في الجملة مطابق للأصل. You come to this conclusion that fuqaha have consensus. They don't have disagreement that in general we accept the word of the person who says he has done something properly. So it's like a ijma. There are so many fatawas that our fuqaha have done, have issued based on this. This is not something controversial, and as I said, Ayatollah Khoui says this is siraya qat'iyya of mutadayyanin throughout the centuries. What is important for us is not to prove the principle because it's obvious. What is important is to discuss details, conditions. For example, a very important question. If someone has done Salatul Mayyit, for example, and we see he has done Salatul Mayyit, and we know he knows how to do Salatul Mayyit, or he says he has washed the body of Mayyit, and we know that he knows, but still you are in doubt. Certainly here you can do asalat al-sahha. You can exercise asalat al-sahha, yeah? Because he knows how to do it. If someone doesn't know, and we know that he doesn't know, can still we exercise asalat al-sahha? No. If you know that he doesn't know, then you cannot say, inshallah, he has done it properly. How can he do it properly without knowing? We are not gambling. We say someone who is a Muslim and it seems that he knows. But if we know that he doesn't know, no. If we are unsure, here they say, still we can exercise it. Because we assume that every person is doing things properly unless it is proved otherwise. So, in two cases you can apply it. When you know that he knows how to do it, or when there is a chance that he may know. Obviously, inshallah, he knows. But if you know that he doesn't know, then you cannot apply اصاله الصحه. This is one point. Another point. اصاله الصحه في فعل المسلم is different from قاعده الفراغ. قاعده الفراغ is, inshallah, what we discuss later. But you are familiar. For example, if after salat you doubt, you say, did I do ruku or not? Did I do tashahhud or not? After salat. What do? You ignore it. You don't pay attention, yeah? Now you doubt about your hajj. You ignore it. Even if you are in Mecca, but your hajj is finished, then you say, was my tawaf right or not? This is qaida faraq. So, anything that you doubt after performing it and finishing it, we ignore it. We have another qaida which is qa'idatul tajawuz. It's different from qa'idatul faraq. That is, for example, you doubt in ruku and you are in sujood. You doubt in sujood when you are in tashahhud. Still you ignore it. That is qa'idatul tajawuz. We will talk about them. So sometimes you pass that, sometimes you complete the action. But that is different from qa'idatu asalat as-sihha. What's the difference? There are two differences. First, qa'idatul faraq, who is doubting? Yourself. About what? About your own action. So in qa'idatul faraq, you doubt about your own action when you have finished it. In asalatul sihha, you are doubting someone else's action, not your action. This is one difference. Second difference, in qa'idatul faraq, action must be over. In asalatul sihha, can be after action is finished, or it can be during. Like what? I see someone is doing salatul mayyit and they have not yet finished. Still I can apply asalatul sihha. It doesn't need to finish and then I doubt. I can even have doubt even when they are doing it. Imam al-Jama'ah has come. Has Imam made wuzu or not? Maybe Imam came without wuzu. Asalatul sihha. Still he has not started salat, but we can do asalatul sihha. But qa'idatul faraq is after finishing your doubts. Okay, so there are two differences. One is that qa'idatul faraq is about your own action. Asalatul sihha is about another person. Second is qa'idatul faraq after the action is over, but asalatul sihha can be after or can be during the action or even before the action. Another question. Asalatul sihha fi fi'l al-Muslim means you know someone has done something or you see is doing something and your doubt it is about what? Validity, about sihha. But if you are not sure that he has done it, then you cannot assume that it's valid. For example, we know someone has done salatul mayyit, but we don't know how. You say, inshallah, it's valid. Unless you know that person is not aware. But if by him saying that we have done salatul mayyit, you have still doubt that they have done it, you cannot assume that it has been done properly. So we say اصاله الصحه في فعل المسلم. So you have to establish فعل, and then if you have doubt about validity, you ignore it. But if you don't know that person has done it or not, you cannot ignore it. Okay? Now I have a test for you. It's a bit difficult. I am a musalli in this masjid, and a place was najis. You don't know me. Sometimes you know me and you are sure. When I say I have done it, you know that I have done it. But you don't know me. I tell you I have washed it. You cannot apply asalat al-siha. Why? Because the action itself is doubted. Okay? But if caretaker of masjid says I have washed it, then we accept it. Why? Not because قاعده اصاله الصحه. Because of another rule that we have. من ملك شيئا ملك الإقرار به. Whoever is in charge of something, if he says he has done it, we accept it. So if you don't know me, but it's my home and I say I have washed it, you have to accept. I mean, you can accept. It's my home. But masjid is not mine. So I don't have yad over this here. If a person is asked to do hajj niyabatan, and he says that I have done it, if you know he has done it and you doubt it, you do asalatul sah. But if you don't know that he has done it, then fuqaha may use another rule, and that is man malaka shay'an malaka al-iqrar bih. You have made him responsible for this. Now you have to listen to him. He doesn't need to prove to you, bring films that I have done this. You make someone wakil to sell your home, and he says I have sold it. You accept it because you made him responsible for this. Or someone, said, I have divorced my wife because he has control, he can divorce. So we don't need to ask him, prove this to us, because this is something that it was his responsibility, his authority, and he was able to do it. But if someone else says that these man and woman are divorced, we don't accept from him. Say, you don't have any say about this. You cannot say, asalatul siha. He says, there is talaq, there was talaq, and it's valid. No. We don't know talaq has taken form. But if the husband says, or the wife says, I am divorced, but here, of course, there are details to whom. For example, the wife cannot say to the husband, or there are some differences. So, inshallah, in future, but I don't know if you have time, but in the discussion which we had in Hose, which is online, it's more detailed. We have these two rules that might be helpful for you. One is man malaka shay'an malaka al-iqrar bih. One is qaidatul iqrar, admission, confession. Iqrarul uqala ala anfusihim jaiz. If someone admits something against himself, this is valid. Not in favor of himself. Okay? So if someone says, this lady is my wife, that lady doesn't need to listen, but he has to pay for his nafaqah, her nafaqah. Ala anfusihim jaiz, but not for his interest. So these are technical rules that we can apply, but for the time being, we cannot apply اصاله الصحه في فعل المسلم when we are in doubt whether the action has taken form or not. This is the general rule. In some cases, we can have another rule to establish that action was okay, and that is when the person who is in charge says, I have done it. That's different from اصاله الصحه. Okay? So, alhamdulillah, we finished this قاعده, and inshallah we'll continue next week. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.